Hello! We're back.
We're back.
It's Friday or Saturday or Sunday or whatever day you're listening to this episode, and we're back with a new episode.
We said that already.
Yeah.
Well, I said that already.
Yeah. Thanks for all the nice reviews. Not the nice reviews, but the nice feedback on the last episode. And we like to have guests on, so if you are an interesting person and you have something to say, you can totally be a guest on our podcast.
Yeah.
Just hit us up on our Instagram or on our email or whatever, and we can figure something out.
Indeed.
Today we're talking about gender roles and gender stereotypes because, I don't know, it's kind of an important issue, but also interesting in many ways because we're, I don't know, kind of born into a, sexual gender, kinda. And with all the stuff that's going on with the LGBTQ movement and just being who you are and don't confine yourself to the
confines of gender.
Right, to male or female. Just, try to express who you are and don't be restricted by all this stuff. And therefore the gender stereotypes, basically male, female, like the classic.
I mean, not just male, female. There are also gender stereotypes about gay people and trans people.
Obviously, nowadays, sure. Obviously. But yeah, I mean, they were born in the male, female category, so to say, because, before a certain time, there was only that, apparently, which is not true, obviously, but it's been, I don't know, the community, I don't know, the dialogue is more open nowadays about that stuff. But look back in the 60s or 50s, even the stereotypes were very confined, very restricting in a lot of ways. As a woman, you were only able to do certain things because other things were the man's, job or work or whatever you want to call it. For example,
I would just say let's just jump in. I feel like this is kind of a long intro to what we're doing.
It's not an intro. It's still we're already in the topic.
Let's start with that's what I'm saying. You're kind of in between both stereotypes and roles, but let's start with maybe gender roles and go into
that's what I just want to say. I think isn't there still no, that's not. But there was some states in the US, for example, there were rules where women were not allowed to drive.
Mm-hmm. There are countries that still have that rule.
There are countries where that rule is still go. And a couple of years ago, we listened to a talk from a woman I think she was from Israel, I
think so.
Not 100% sure. But she was one of the first women there who drove with the car and recorded herself. And she had to go to jail for that even. But she is a big advocate for that movement, for women's rights movement, basically, and for equalization of rights for women. So yeah, it's pretty insane that things like that are still common. And also with certain roles, especially, I wouldn't say especially, but in a certain group of people, age group of people, for example, my uncle, my aunt, 50, 60-ish, they're still very this is a male's thing and this is a female's thing.
Yeah, I think it really depends on when you grew up. So what time you grew up in. With our time, we've grown up in our generation with so much change in terms of we were young and maybe some of those gender roles and stereotypes were more common, but we're starting to push the buttons a little bit and push down some barriers as we age with our generation. But our parents' generation, not all of them are capable of thinking outside of that because they're this is how it always was. And even more so with our grandparents' generation, where things will just always be how they were when they were 20.
But I also remember I was not allowed to play with dolls or certain things.
You weren't allowed to?
I wasn't allowed to. And also you were made fun of, obviously.
Yeah.
If you played with dolls, you were made fun of, and that's not cool. That's not what a boy does and stuff like that.
But that's again more of stereotype than a gender role.
Right. But you were already pushed into a certain role. This is what a man does.
Mm-hmm.
Like crying, for example. Like we talked about this a couple of times already in the podcast, where, you know, a boy shouldn't cry. A man is not crying.
Mm-hmm. But again, let's switch to roles. Let's come to stereotypes. Those are all stereotypes. Roles. Yeah. So like, for example, for on the women's perspective of it, a lot of gender roles that have been placed on us are the women, when they get pregnant, they're the ones to stay home with the kids once they have the kid. Mm-hmm. God forbid they go into work. If they go into work, they're seen as a bad mother. But if the father goes into work, he's seen as like the breadwinner, brings home the bacon. You know, that's what he's supposed to do.
I mean, that's also a stereotype, though.
No, that's what I mean. That is a stereotype.
But I wanted to go into gender roles.
Yeah, but that is a gender role.
Oh, okay.
Because it's their role to be the breadwinner, and it's the woman's role to be the caretaker. Mm-hmm. And women are the people who cook more often. Women are cleaning more. Women are, I don't know, we had this, the parent, the nurturer. And those are more of like the women's roles that have been kind
also
of related to that gender.
The emotional part in the relationship with children, or
mm-hmm.
you know, when children have like a problem that is more like emotional based, then they go to the mom usually. They don't go to the dad, because dad can't fix that usually. And certain fathers or certain male figures, they just don't have they never learned how to express feelings, and they never learned how to deal with feelings, and which is kind of sad. And I grew up with a father who for a long time had problems expressing his feelings, and still does, but there were certain things I couldn't go to him because I knew that he would not understand, or he would just brush it over, and yeah, I think that's also a big part. And I don't know. It's so sad to see that with those restrictions, they were pushed into those like roles of, this is how you behave, and this is how much emotion you show. It is some sort of restricting in your life and also in your happiness, I think, and can lead to a lot of problems, especially with relationships, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this. I think suppressing something can lead to anger problems, can lead to other psychological things, anxiety, depression. Heavily drinking. I mean, this is still a stereotype that is more common in men. But I mean, studies show that more men are like heavily drinkers because of exactly that, because of suppressing their emotions, because of not being able to convey them.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as some typical male roles that you're taught like from a young age? Like, it's the man's job to
the man behaves a certain way. Like, the man has the certain traits, the manly traits. You know, he's a strong mm-hmm. man. He knows how to fix things. Mm-hmm. That's something. You already said it. He's the breadwinner, or he takes care of the family. Mm-hmm. And for example, if you can't do that because you don't find a job, or you struggle to find the right job, then you're a loser, or you're
seen as less masculine.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's still a thing. Like growing a beard, having hair, facial hair is as a manly thing, mm-hmm. which is also kind of weird, but that's just how it is. What else?
I mean, I still oftentimes hear actually with a lot of women, like your mom and in your mom's age group, a lot of women here are very, like, I hear them say things like, oh, I could never do that, or women can't do that, and they don't usually always specifically say women can't, but you can tell by what they're saying. So like, for example, like changing a tire or something on a car, or, you know, just something like that, or changing the oil. Yeah. Oh, I need somebody else to do that because I can't do that.
I can change the oil. I can't.
You can't.
I probably could, but I wouldn't.
But it's just, I hear a lot of women say things like that here, like, oh, I could never do that. I can't learn how to do that. That's, you know, making the assumption that's a man's job. Men do that kind of thing.
which is so stupid.
I mean, it's sad.
It's not only dumb because it's a rule or like a role that basically was made by society. But also, who says that a woman can't do certain things? Who decided that? It's so stupid. And then make laws. I mean, again, with the car thing, then some man most likely got along and said, okay, let's make that a law.
Yeah.
Which is so fucking outrageous. I mean,
think about it, in the US, there was a time where women couldn't vote.
Right. I mean, here too.
What the hell kind of sense does that make? Yep.
I mean, and it's still the ongoing fight with like abortions. I mean, it's like a really
Not just abortions, but just women's health in general.
In general, right? You
men are making decisions about what women can do with their bodies.
Right. Man, basically white, usually older man.
Yep.
Make laws about what a woman is allowed to do with the body. And
they politicize what we're allowed to do with our bodies.
And it's outrageous. And it's so stupid. If you think about it, it's so fucking stupid.
I mean, all you have to do is it's a very simple argument. And most of these men who are making these decisions refuse to see the argument, but I think it's the most valid one out there, is for example, if a man couldn't get an erection anymore, which happens.
That never happens.
Guess what? There's this magical pill called Viagra that any doctor will just willy-nilly prescribe you, because that needs to happen for a man. That is something that absolutely needs to happen for a man. When a woman is having problems sexually or like with her libido, no doctor can help you. You might be able to go see like a sex therapist. You might be able to do something like that. But if you go to any doctor, they'll be like, yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
And they don't care. And I guarantee you that if anybody tried to make some sort of decision for a man saying, no, your insurance is no longer going to cover that. Insurance doesn't even cover the pill in full. Most insurance in the US.
Yeah.
So insurance covers Viagra so a man can get an erection, but doesn't cover things that a woman actually needs to prevent getting pregnant if she doesn't want to get pregnant, but then can't make the decision to not have the child should she get pregnant because she can't afford. It's just it's a whole backward system, where if it were the other way, I think men would have a lot to say if we were trying to control what they can and can't do with their bodies.
It's in general, I mean, the like in history, women are seen as the weaker gender, which is absolutely bullshit. But in general, this it's still there in society, you know. Women get paid less usually. I mean, it's changing a little bit, but it's changing super slowly. There was a study recently which said if the rate is going like that with the change, it takes, I think, until 2050 or something, or 2060 until the payment is equal.
Why?
Yeah.
Just that takes so long. It can happen overnight.
Yeah,
just make a law, you have to pay them the same amount.
That's not how politics and that works.
I know, but
it
has
should.
To
be super slow. And it's still in the system. It's still in the society that, you know, women are a certain way and men are a certain way. And only because you're a man, especially white, then again, you have certain privileges that maybe a woman and then maybe a male who doesn't look white, you know, the typical white male might not have. And all that shit is based on just like a construct that was formed in society a couple of, I don't know.
Hundreds of years ago.
I mean, yeah, it's funny because those gender roles obviously changed through the time, because obviously society changed. And it's proof that it's still changing, because if you look back until in the 60s, 70s, it changed a lot. But still, we're at a point where I think we have to do so much more. And a big thing is just educating your children, I think. And
raising good people.
Raising them in the belief, or not in the belief, it's not a belief. Raising them knowing that everyone is equal. No matter how they look, no matter how they identify them as themselves, it doesn't matter. Everyone is equal. Let's take a quick break. And we're back.
So let's go into some gender stereotypes. And again, with gender stereotypes, we're mostly referring to male-female gender stereotypes. Granted, there are hundreds of thousands probably of gender stereotypes for all genders.
I mean, with that, I just want to quickly add is the gender roles can hurt people, obviously, especially if you don't feel like, okay, you fit in one of those two roles or maybe three. Then there's something called gender role stress, and that can obviously develop into depression, anxiety, or whatever. And you basically can have a lot of problems because of that. And so therefore alone that makes me feel like, okay, this system of having roles, gender roles usually based on the baby's genitalia when it's born. So, okay, this is a girl, therefore blah, blah, blah. This is a boy, therefore blah, blah, blah. It's so wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we can go into this a little bit more at the end, but I think a way to kind of break down gender roles and such, or like to get rid of them, is at least in a relationship, from a relationship standpoint, in your relationship, if you are in a male-female relationship, or honestly however you identify, there doesn't have to be roles. Just completely throw away the construct of that, because it is about working together. Being in a relationship is about doing things together or taking on different roles, and it doesn't matter if it's taking out the garbage or cooking. You don't have to be a good cook if you're a woman, and you don't have to be good at fixing things if you're a man. I mean, it doesn't matter. And it can also be a fun opportunity to learn something new, where, you've learned cooking a little more because I'm good at cooking. And so we started cooking together, and you learned a lot about cooking.
That's true.
And I try to learn little things about, like, the other day I watched changing the tires, because I think that's a valuable skill to have, just to know how to do it. And I think that's also, it's about learning. It's about teaching each other and not specifying this role to a specific gender.
Yeah.
So some of these gender stereotypes I found online. Some of them, some of you lovely people wrote to me. I posed the question on Instagram and actually got a lot of responses. So I'm going to start with some that are basically started right from when you're a kid. So girls should play with dolls, like you were saying, and boys should play with trucks. That's a very typical, when you find out that you're having a girl or you find out you're having a boy, people will give you toys based on the fact if your child is going to be a boy or a girl. Or books even, or things that are pink versus things that are blue. And if a boy likes pink, they're made fun of. Yeah. Which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Not to say that it's not fine. Like, it's fine if your boy or if your girl wants to play with those things. Like trucks or dolls, obviously. But I think the thing is, you see at a certain point, you see what they're interested in, and you shouldn't condemn that. You shouldn't say, no, you are not allowed to play with that because of your gender.
Right. There's a really great meme that's like, how to find out if a toy is for boys or for girls. Oh, yeah. And then they say something like, is the toy operated with your genitalia? And then, if no, this toy is for everyone. It's so good. Another stereotype for kids is that boys should not wear dresses. Boys should not, again, like the color pink or things that are seen as girly. Yeah. Boys should not wear nail polish. Yeah. Things like that. Which, again, I see is so silly. I mean, a friend of mine, her son and her, they have little, like, nail polish dates where they paint each other's nails. And I think it's the sweetest thing ever. And it's just like, why not? If the kid, that's the child expressing themselves, and I don't see any issue with that. And I don't like that we have things that are specifically for girls and specifically for boys.
Right.
Because why is there a rule? There shouldn't be a rule.
It's so stupid. Sure, you can argue with clothing and stuff like that, but at the same time, who the fuck cares if a boy wants to wear a dress? Right. Who the fuck care if a man wants to wear a skirt or whatever, If
it makes them feel confident, if it makes them feel good about themselves, isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we want?
And I think it's that the whole, people are so easily agitated by things that other people do, even though they don't matter in their life at all. They're not affected by their choices, but they still are offended by what they're doing or what they're showing outside. And I mean, in the most cases, most people are jealous or feel like, okay, shit, that person is able to express something that I might want to express, but I can't. And then they get angry, or they are mean, or all that shit. But if a person's choice, what to wear, what to do with their life, doesn't affect you at all, then leave them the fuck alone.
Yep. And then going on to like youth age, so younger children, younger kids or teenagers, high school age, around that. We always heard this in school. Girls are better at reading and boys are better at math.
Ooh, I was really bad at math.
I was good at math. And I was bad at reading.
I mean, I was okay at reading. I like to write little short stories.
Yeah, me too. I love to write short stories. Another one in youth age, girls are expected to behave and boys are expected to act out.
Yeah.
So girls should always be on their best behavior and be polite. But boys, it's like, oh, boys will be boys if they're acting out or they're, doing whatever. I
mean, it's still, when they're grown up, that's a big thing for... we had, sadly, 9 women died in Austria 2021 already by a man killing them. And there's the discussion now again, like, what can we do to, make women feel safer and try to, get people who are angry and who, need to feel like they have to act out the anger and then hurt someone or kill someone, the help that they need. And the big discussion now is, okay, whose fault is that? Obviously, again, and a lot of men are like, ooh, it's, that woman, blah, blah, did probably that, and he was already super, they're trying to find excuses for what happened. When in fact, it doesn't, the thing is, there's no excuse, first of all. And second, that shouldn't be the discussion. It should not be the discussion. The discussion should be, why is it still that men are almost like, that's just something that happens, it's like, okay, that's just nature, basically. We don't even like think about, maybe we should rethink our like educational system, maybe we should rethink those gender roles. Yeah.
Well, to go with that, another stereotype for boys is that boys and men are expected to use violence or aggression to, quote, prove their manliness.
Right, that's exactly what I said, yeah.
That's showing that you're a man, that you can fight somebody, or if somebody gets in your face, that you're bigger than them or you're tougher than them. And if you're not that way, if you hold back, if you don't fight, if you don't use aggression, then you're seen as a loser, weak, or you're a target for bullying.
I think when in fact it's the opposite. Men are stronger and way manlier if they can walk away from a fight, and if they don't use aggression, anger, and their fists to,
And that's true for any human being. It's just being a good, grounded human being if you don't have to resort to violence and anger to solve a problem. Because in the end, it doesn't solve the problem.
No.
You can be fighting over something and you may win the fist fight, but that doesn't solve the initial problem.
No.
That doesn't solve what you were fighting about in the first place. That just shows, I, in this moment, was stronger, which is stupid.
Yeah.
Some other ones kind of just more generalized and not really more like about age. We kind of talked about this one too. Men are not allowed to cry or to show emotion. But on the other side of that, women who show too much emotion are either on their periods, which makes me want to scream, or they're bitchy, or
whiny.
Yeah.
I mean, with all those stereotypes, and in general, not only on gender stereotypes, but stereotypes in general, stereotypes are like a breeding ground for motivating to condemn people, to oppress people, to, as you already said, to make fun of people, and they're basically like the perfect way to bring people down in any way or form. And it starts in school when, little boys play with dolls maybe, and all of a sudden all the boys laugh because, ooh, look, it's a girl, blah, blah, blah. And the same with women, obviously, and girls who maybe not behave how the norm behaves or whatever the norm is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes further with stereotypes with black people or people from a different country. I mean, we have that here in Austria. We have a lot of people with different migration backgrounds, and a lot of fucking racists are having stereotypes. Like they hold stereotypes and say, okay, those people in general, blah blah, which is
I think
awful.
stereotypes, it's partly how you're raised, because I think you learn those things at a young age. And so it's either from your parents or it's from your grandparents or from the people you spend the majority of your time with.
Sure,
I think a lot is learned.
Sure.
A lot is in society, like in the media, especially in our generation. A lot is in the media. But I also think that a lot of stereotypes stem from people who are insecure about themselves.
Obviously.
Or maybe they're uncomfortable. Sure, there might be some people out there, like people who are homophobic, for example. If you ask them why they feel that way, most of them probably can't give you a solid answer. And it's most likely because they're insecure about themselves and they weren't ever exposed to that in their childhood or, you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And it's just it goes back to me for like, I'll never understand homophobia. I'll never understand transphobia. I'll never understand racism, because it's mind-boggling to me that we can treat fellow human beings a certain way just because of their choices for their own personal life that have no effect on mine, or where they come from, or their skin color.
Those concepts are understandable in the sense that if you're surrounded by them all the time, all day long, then you understand them to a certain extent, and then you also act out on them. You believe them. That's your world then, you know?
And part of it is probably about fitting in. I mean, especially with kids. Especially with kids.
Right.
They want to fit in, and if all the other kids are laughing at this one kid, they're like, oh, I'm not the target, so I'm going to laugh along.
Right. So, but if you think of like really young children, they don't give a shit about anything about that. So it's drilled in, it's man-made, it's women-made. So
absolutely.
Those things are basically able to be gone if we want to by a generation, if you really want to.
I think just a couple more that I want to put out there. A lot of, especially these days, I think it was throughout my entire life a thing, but women who appear less feminine or who work out more, maybe more muscular, or God forbid a woman turns down a man's advances because she's purely not interested in him. Yeah. She's then considered, oh, she must be a lesbian.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that still a thing? That is still a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's also obnoxious, because just because, even if I were a lesbian, just because I look a certain way, just because I act a certain way doesn't make me that. I am that because that's how I feel inside. Yeah. I am how I am because of how I feel about who I am as a person.
I mean, even
not how I look. How I look doesn't define, oh, I look like this, therefore I must be lesbian, or I must be gay, or I must be, you know?
This is so fucking stupid. I
mean, it's the same with men. It's the same with gay men.
Sometimes when women look a certain way and then other men are, oh, that woman is clearly a lesbian.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we heard that recently.
I know we heard that recently. And it makes me so angry, because you are judging. First of all, you're judging a person based on their looks, which is the worst. Second, you don't know the person. Third,
it's also hatred.
It's hatred,
because you put it in such a negative light.
And also, you're putting lesbians into one drawer, and it's just awful. It's just so fucking awful.
Yep. I mean, it's the same way you see there are people who would see like a really buff, like, quote, manly man, and they would find out he's gay and be like, how could he be gay? There's no way that he's gay, because gay people are all the same and they all do this and that. And it's just, there are so many stereotypes surrounding just the LGBT community in general that are so infuriating that people can't see just because you're this way, which is ridiculous. It's just like fingerprints. All our fingerprints are different. We don't all look the same. We don't all have the same beliefs. Just because I have brown hair doesn't mean I'm blah, 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 or just because I have red hair doesn't mean I'm Irish, or just because it's just, it's stupid. It's legitimately stupid.
It is stupid.
There's no logical thinking behind any of it. And kind of on the other side of that, men who spend time with their children, because we talked about women who have children but then go back to work are seen as bad mothers. But men who spend too much time with their children and family are less masculine, and they're poor breadwinners because they're not taking care of their family. That's also ridiculous.
I mean, I think in general, all of those stereotypes are stupid, and we should end them. And we should also call people out of them. I think that's a big thing. If you hear someone exactly doing that, if you hear someone saying, "Oh, this is not manly," or blah blah, or "man up," or stuff like that, or even in the other spectrum where a woman says, "Okay, don't do that. That's not women-like, or that's not how ladies behave." Whatever, whatever they say. Everyone heard that.
When someone tells me that something I do is not ladylike, I either respond with "suck my dick" or
just call them the fuck out. Call them the fuck out and say, we're in the fucking year 2021. We are not doing this anymore. I fucking behave like how I want to fucking behave, and I'm not put into a fucking, sorry, all the fucks. And I'm not going to be put into a drawer or into a category only because your beliefs or your I don't know, worldview is
it's ignorance, right? Is what it is.
Yeah. Nah.
But it is important. The thing is, you don't have to get angry with somebody, but if you hear it, then say something, because sure, it's a million times easier to say something if you're sitting behind a computer screen and you can just type it, but that's less likely to get across because, again, the other people are sitting across from a computer screen, and then it just turns into this stupid battle of I know more than you.
I mean, it's the same thing when someone of your friends or family members uses the N-word, for example, and you usually call them out. You say, "Hey, I'm sorry, but we don't say that word anymore. We just don't say it because it's fucking racist." And if they say, "Yeah, but back then, blah, blah." Yeah, awesome when you used it back then in the 60s or 50s. That's fine. But we're still
not awesome.
We're not using that anymore.
Yeah, but even in the 60s, that was offensive. It's always been offensive.
Always. No, I'm not saying that it's not been. But we are not in the 60s and 70s where everyone was saying it. No, we're not. We're in the fucking year 2021. We're not saying that word anymore.
And that's also, the same people who use that argument is also so stupid, because just because people said it back then, or more people, doesn't mean that it was okay. No. So the whole argument is so stupid.
But that's what I'm saying. If you hear things like that, call people out on them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would do that a lot with when I worked in childcare. There were kids who, we'd be playing with Barbies or something. Yeah. And I would always dress up Ken in this fabulous sparkly dress, because why not? And it also was a good way to start a conversation with kids, where every single time I did it, a kid would question, why is Ken in a dress? You can't put Ken in a dress. Yeah. And you can do it in such a calm way. You don't need to say of course you can, but you can just say, yeah, sure. He likes wearing a dress sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. And they're like, but dresses are for girls. And I'm like, no. Dresses are for everyone. Clothes are for everyone. And you try to change the discussion without telling them that they're wrong for saying something, but rather just saying that it's okay. Everybody can make their own choices. Clothing are for people.
I think not especially for men with children, or for women. It's easier because you can choose what they consume, and you can purposefully choose a more open and non-biased media, like books, stories, movies, series, stuff like that. There's so much out there where they don't promote exactly those roles. Right. And be more open, and then maybe your kid is also more prone to, live their life how they want to live it, and maybe
and also logical thinking,
right? And also express themselves how they want to express themselves.
Yeah. And I can highly recommend to anybody, this is what I'm going to do as a parent, but when the time comes, I want to, not just with books, but with toys that we buy, I want there to be a good combination of, these are what would be generally, quote, boy toys, and these are what generally would be girl toys, but just have here are just some toys. Right. And you can play with whatever you want. You can build things.
Unless I play with them.
I mean, Legos are a ways down the road, but
no, we won't get Legos.
Oh yes, we will.
No,
get Legos.
They're the worst for the environment.
Then we get something like Legos and that are better.
Maybe then the Legos are green.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
But just to expose children to different things, and not just, we're having a girl, and so therefore you get everything that's pink and princessy, and just go for it and get trucks and get some, because how are they supposed to know that it's okay for them to play with that stuff if they're never exposed to it?
Yeah.
And only boys are exposed to that stuff. I think that's where it starts.
Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing the podcast. Thanks for your feedback. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and a rating. And other than that, we hear each other next week.
Indeed. Bye. Bye.